A decorated veteran breaks down on live television, whispering, "I just don't want to be forgotten." In that stillness, Keanu Reeves and Dwayne Johnson exchange a look that will change everything. What they do after the cameras stop rolling will leave an entire nation in tears. Before we continue this incredible story, let us know where you're watching from. If you enjoy stories like this, subscribe to the channel, because tomorrow we have another inspiring story you won't want to miss. The stage lights of American Courage Live shimmered across a sea of faces, veterans, families, and ordinary Americans who came to honor those who had served. The atmosphere was warm and celebratory, filled with applause and laughter. Behind the scenes, Keanu Reeves stood quietly near the curtain, hands in his pockets, listening. Dwayne Johnson adjusted his jacket beside him, a calm mountain of energy waiting for his cue. Neither man was there for publicity. They had come to honor men and women they both deeply respected. The host, a cheerful man in his 50s, opened the show with his usual optimism. "Tonight we celebrate real heroes, those who carried our flag into places most of us could never imagine." The crowd responded with cheers, waving miniature American flags handed out at the door. Keanu's eyes scanned the front rows. He noticed the quiet pride in the veterans' faces, the kind that comes not from medals, but from survival. When it was their turn to appear, Dwayne walked out first, his presence commanding instant respect. Keanu followed, humble and understated, offering a soft smile and a nod to the audience. The host joked about having John Wick and The Rock on the same stage, and the crowd laughed. But behind the laughter, Keanu sensed a heaviness in the room, a truth unspoken, lingering beneath the surface of patriotic celebration. The host invited a few veterans to share their stories. One by one, they spoke about courage, brotherhood, and sacrifice. Applause followed each one. Then, from the second row, a man slowly stood up. His hair was silver at the temples, his jacket old but clean. The name patch read Mitchell. His hands trembled slightly as he reached for the microphone the assistant handed him. "My name's Ray Mitchell," he began, his voice low but steady. "I served in Afghanistan. 20 years ago, I came home thinking life would finally make sense again." He paused, eyes glistening under the bright studio lights. "But sometimes, coming home is the hardest part." The audience quieted. Even the cameras seemed to slow, zooming in on his face. Ray went on, explaining that after losing his wife to cancer during the pandemic, bills piled up, jobs disappeared, and eventually, so did his home. "Now," he said softly, "I sleep in a van behind a grocery store, the same store I used to shop at with my wife." His voice broke for the first time. A single cough echoed from quote, somewhere in the crowd. But otherwise, silence filled the studio. Keanu felt his throat tighten. He had heard stories like this before, but something about Ray's honesty cut deeper. Dwayne's massive hands gripped the armrest of his chair, knuckles white. Ray looked up, meeting the eyes of the audience. "I'm not here for pity," he said. "I just want people to remember that some of us are still fighting, even after the war's over." The applause didn't come right away. For a long moment, all anyone could do was stare. The lighthearted show had turned into something raw, something real. Keanu's gaze met Dwayne's. Both men understood without a word. This night would not end like any other. The host shifted awkwardly in his seat, trying to recover the show's rhythm. "Thank you, Mr. Mitchell, for your service and for sharing your story," he said, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. The teleprompter still scrolled cheerful notes about upcoming segments, but everyone in the studio felt it. The tone had changed completely. The laughter that had filled the room minutes earlier was gone, replaced by an ache that lingered in the air, like the hum of quiet grief. Ray sat down, folding his hands together. The camera stayed on him for a few extra seconds. Even the producers in the control booth didn't cut away. One of them whispered, keep rolling. Sensing this was something powerful, something real, Keanu's chest rose with a deep, unsteady breath. He leaned slightly forward, elbows on his knees, eyes fixed on Ray. It wasn't pity he felt, it was recognition. He saw in Ray the same quiet endurance he had seen in men who had lost everything and still carried on. Dwayne noticed too. The muscles in his jaw tightened. He had played soldiers on screen before, but here was a man who had lived the kind of courage that movies could never capture. The host cleared his throat. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our special guests. Tonight, Keanu Reeves and Dwayne Johnson. The audience clapped, hesitant at first, then louder as the two men stood and waved. But both actors seemed distracted, their minds elsewhere. Dwayne smiled politely, yet his eyes flicked back toward Ray. Keanu walked to his seat, murmuring a thank you to a veteran who reached out to shake his hand. The host began asking light questions about upcoming movies, about their careers, about teamwork. Dwayne answered with his usual warmth, talking about discipline and gratitude. Keanu responded quietly about compassion and the lessons fame can't teach. But as Ray's words replayed in their heads, I sleep in a van behind a grocery store. Neither could pretend this was just another talk show appearance. At one point, the host joked, maybe we'll see a movie where you two play brothers in arms next. The crowd laughed again, grateful for a moment of relief. Keanu smiled faintly but said, maybe real life has better stories than we could ever write. The line hung in the air like a quiet truth. Dwayne looked down at his lap, his massive hands clasped together. He had built empires on charisma and strength, but this was different. The strength required here wasn't physical, it was moral. He caught Keanu's eye and nodded slightly, a wordless agreement forming between them. When the segment ended, the band played cheerful outro music. The audience applauded, but it felt subdued, thoughtful. Keanu stood slowly, shaking the host's hand. Dwayne followed, giving a respectful nod to the veterans in the crowd. As the studio lights dimmed for the next break, both men turned toward Ray again. He sat silently in the same spot, head bowed, his medal catching the light. Neither of them knew it yet, but that small glint of reflection would mark the beginning of something life-changing. When the final segment wrapped and the audience began to file out, the chatter was quieter than usual. Even the host avoided eye contact with the guests as he shook hands and thanked them for appearing. Keanu and Dwayne remained near the edge of the stage, neither moving toward the exit. Something inside both of them refused to let this moment end with applause and camera flashes. Ray Mitchell lingered in his seat, folding and unfolding the note card he'd used to remember his lines. His shoulders were slumped, but his posture carried the weight of dignity. Keanu watched him from a distance, noticing the careful way he placed his worn veteran's cap back on his head, as if that small act kept him anchored to the life he once had. Dwayne leaned closer to Keanu and whispered, we can't just let him walk out like that. Keanu nodded. No, we can't. They stepped down from the stage, ignoring the producers who were already talking about the next episode. Keanu approached Ray quietly, his steps slow, deliberate. The older man turned, startled for a moment, then gave a modest smile. Didn't mean to. Get everyone down, Ray said softly. Guess I just needed to be heard one last time. Keanu shook his head. You didn't bring anyone down, he replied. You brought something real into the room. Most people never get that far. Dwayne joined them, placing a hand on Ray's shoulder, his voice deep but kind. You didn't need to act tough tonight. You reminded us what courage really looks like. Ray looked between them, clearly humbled. You guys don't need to worry about me, he said. I've had worse nights. I'll be fine. But his tone betrayed exhaustion, years of carrying silent pain. Keanu didn't press, but something in his calm gaze made Ray pause. Where are you parked? He asked gently. Ray chuckled awkwardly. Oh, just behind the grocery store off Melrose. Don't worry, it's safe there." Those words settled like a stone in Keanu's chest. Dwayne's brow furrowed, and he exchanged another glance with Keanu, one that spoke volumes. As Ray walked away, clutching his old duffel bag, the studio lights dimmed completely. Keanu stayed rooted in place, watching the door close behind him. Dwayne finally said, "That man fought for this country, and now he's sleeping in a van. That's not okay." Keanu's reply came quietly, but with a conviction that felt immovable. "Then let's change it." In that dim, echoing studio, surrounded by empty seats and fading applause, a silent promise was made between two men who had spent their lives pretending to be heroes on screen, now ready to become them in real life. The studio emptied slowly, the sound of laughter replaced by the mechanical hum of stage lights cooling overhead. Crew members packed up cables and microphones, while a janitor swept bits of confetti left from the earlier segments. Keanu remained seated on the edge of the stage, lost in thought. Most celebrities would have been halfway home by now, but he sat still, eyes fixed on the chair where Ray Mitchell had spoken. That simple metal chair now seemed heavier than all the bright lights and cameras surrounding it. A young production assistant approached timidly, holding a clipboard. "Mr. Reeves, your car is waiting out back." Keanu looked up, offering a faint smile. "Thank you," he said. "But could you tell me who handles guest follow-ups?" "I'd like to get in touch with one of the veterans who spoke tonight." The assistant blinked, surprised. "You mean for media coverage?" she asked. "No," Keanu said gently. "For something personal." She hesitated, clearly unsure if she was even allowed to share that kind of information. "You might need to talk to the producer," she finally said. Keanu nodded, stood up, and walked toward the control booth. Dwayne was still inside, chatting with a few camera operators. When he saw Keanu, he raised a questioning eyebrow. "Can you hang around a bit longer?" Keanu asked. "There's something I need to do." Dwayne shrugged off his jacket and followed him out. "Man, you're not letting this go, are you?" he said half-jokingly, but there was admiration in his tone. "No," Keanu replied quietly. "That guy Ray, he's out there tonight, sleeping in a parking lot, while we go home to comfort, doesn't sit right." They found the producer, a middle-aged woman juggling her phone and a headset. "Hey," Keanu began politely, "I know this is a strange request, but could you share contact info for one of the guests? His name is Ray Mitchell. I'd like to reach out, maybe offer some help." The producer blinked, clearly thrown off. "That's unusual, Mr. Reeves. Most people, well, they don't usually ask about guests after the show." Keanu's tone stayed calm but firm. "Maybe they should." Dwayne stepped beside him, adding, "We just want to make sure the man's okay. He's a veteran. He deserves that much." The producer studied them both. Two global stars, standing there, not for a photo op, but for a stranger who had no idea what was happening. Something in their sincerity broke her hesitation. She nodded slowly. "Give me a few minutes," she said. As they waited, Dwayne leaned against the hallway wall, arms crossed. "You know, I meet a lot of people on these shows," he said. "Some stories hit you, but this one, it won't let go." Keanu nodded. "That's how you know it's real." The producer returned a few minutes later, holding a clipboard and a small notepad. "I can't give out private contact details," she said cautiously, "but I can pass along a message. If he agrees, we'll connect you." Keanu nodded in understanding. "That's fair. Please let him know. I just want to check in. No press, no cameras." His voice was calm, but carried quiet urgency. Dwayne added, "Tell him it's from both of us. Let him know he's not alone." The producer smiled faintly. "You two really mean that, don't you?" Keanu looked at her with a soft grin. "We wouldn't be standing here at midnight if we didn't." She laughed lightly, shaking her head as she walked away. When she was gone, silence returned. The crew had mostly left. The bright studio lights were now dimmed, leaving only a few spotlights glowing above the empty chairs. Keanu walked across the stage again, stopping where Ray had stood. The metal chair still faced the audience, untouched since the broadcast. He brushed his fingers along its backrest, as though absorbing the weight of everything that had been said from it. Dwayne joined him. "You thinking what I'm thinking?" he asked quietly. Keanu gave a small nod. "That maybe talking isn't enough," he said. "Maybe it's time to act." They stood there for a long moment, the distant buzz of neon signs flickering outside the glass doors. Dwayne broke the silence first. "I've got a construction crew starting a new build-out in Pasadena next week. They'd help with anything, no questions asked." Keanu looked at him, half smiling. "You're already ahead of me." They started walking toward the exit. The long hallway of the studio stretched ahead, littered with cables and posters from old shows. Dwayne's boots echoed with heavy steps, while Keanu's were quiet, deliberate. It was an image that somehow captured both men perfectly. One strength in motion, the other strength in silence. Outside, the night air felt cooler, washing away the artificial heat of the studio. The parking lot was nearly empty now. Keanu's black motorcycle gleamed faintly under the lamplight, next to Dwayne's oversized pickup truck. They stopped at the edge of the lot, neither ready to leave. Keanu leaned against his bike, folding his arms. "You know," he said softly, "I've met soldiers before on sets, at events. But Ray, he reminded me of my father when things got rough. That look in his eyes when he talked about being forgotten. I've seen it too many times." Dwayne looked toward the horizon, where the faint glow of downtown Los Angeles shimmered. "Then maybe we should remind America what real strength looks like," he said. Keanu met his gaze. The unspoken agreement between them solidified. That night, in the emptiness of a studio parking lot, two men who had spent their lives portraying heroes decided to become one, without cameras, without scripts, and without hesitation. The sound of traffic drifted faintly from the boulevard beyond the studio walls. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed, then faded into silence. Keanu stood still, looking up at the night sky, as if trying to make sense of everything that had just happened. Dwayne took a deep breath and crossed his arms, the cool air misting faintly around him. "You know," he said, "people always talk about heroes like they're someone else, some perfect kind of person. But the real ones, they never see themselves that way." Keanu nodded slowly. "That's why they need to be seen, even if just once." They stood without speaking for a moment, both lost in their own reflections. For Keanu, the night felt heavier than most. His life had been shaped by stories of struggle, people lost, people forgotten. But Ray's story wasn't fiction. It was the kind of truth that sits in your chest long after you've turned off the screen. For Dwayne, it was personal too. His father had known men like Ray, fighters who came home to an empty world that didn't know what to do with them. Finally, Dwayne unlocked his truck door and rested one arm on the open window. "What's your next move?" he asked. Keanu looked down at his helmet, then back toward the studio. "I'm going to find him," he said simply. "If the producer can't get back to me, I'll go myself. I just need to see how he's doing. No spotlight, no story, just a visit." Dwayne gave a slow nod. "You go find him. I'll start making some calls. Let's see if we can do something real." Keanu smiled faintly. The kind of smile that comes not from comfort, but from conviction. "You're a good man, Dwayne." "Just trying to catch up to you, brother," Dwayne said, grinning back. They shook hands firm, wordless, full of intent. There was no talk of cameras, no PR, no foundation meetings, just a quiet understanding between two men who still believed in doing the right thing, even when no one was watching. Keanu slid on his helmet and started the motorcycle. The low rumble of the engine filled the parking lot, echoing off the empty concrete walls. Before riding off, he looked back once more. "See you soon," he said. Dwayne lifted a hand in reply, watching as Keanu's taillight disappeared into the darkness. Then he looked down at his phone, already scrolling through contacts, whispering to himself, "Let's build something that lasts." And just like that, the quiet spark of an idea began to take shape, an idea that would soon transform a single act of kindness into a movement of hope. The night was deep and quiet when Keanu started his motorcycle. The rain from earlier had left the streets slick, reflecting the faint orange glow of the streetlights. He slipped a small folded note from his pocket, the address the producer had managed to find. Behind the old Melrose Market, West Lot. It read in neat handwriting. That was all he had. Los Angeles after midnight felt like a different world. The crowds were gone, the city humming in low whispers instead of noise. As Keanu rode through the nearly empty streets, the hum of the engine was the only sound keeping him grounded. He thought about Ray's words from the show. Every line replayed in his mind. "I just want people to remember that some of us are still fighting." He passed by rows of closed shops, neon signs flickering weakly in the rain-soaked windows. It was hard to believe that somewhere among all this light and luxury, a man who had served his country was sleeping inside a van. The contrast gnawed at him. When he finally reached the strip mall, the parking lot was half flooded. Puddles rippled under the dim glow of a single security lamp. At the far end, near a line of dumpsters, he saw it. A rust-colored van with peeling paint and one broken taillight. The windshield wipers were raised, the windows fogged from the inside. Keanu turned off the engine and listened. The distant hum of a freeway filled the air, but beneath it was a faint sound of a small radio playing an old country song. He approached quietly, his boots splashing softly through the water. Inside the van, a flickering battery lamp cast uneven light across the cramped space. He could see a few military medals hanging from the rearview mirror, a folded American flag on the dashboard, and a worn Bible on the seat beside a photograph of a smiling woman. Her face radiated warmth even in the dim light. Keanu hesitated for a moment before gently knocking on the door. There was movement inside, a startled rustle, followed by the click of a latch. The door opened halfway, and Ray Mitchell's weary face appeared in the gap. His eyes widened when he saw who it was. "Keanu Reeves?" he said, disbelief thick in his voice. Keanu raised his hand slightly, as if to ease his surprise. "Hey, Ray. Sorry for showing up unannounced. I just wanted to see how you were doing." Ray blinked a few times, then laughed softly, though there was no humor in it. "I'd ask how you found me, but I guess that's what people like you can do." Keanu shook his head. "Not people like me. Just a man who couldn't stop thinking about what you said." For a moment, neither spoke. Rain began to fall again, light but steady, tapping gently against the metal roof of the van. Ray stepped aside, gesturing toward the narrow space inside. "Well, come on then. It's not much, but you're welcome to it." Keanu ducked slightly and climbed in, the scent of oil and damp metal mixing with the faint aroma of instant coffee. The van was old but organized. A sleeping bag was neatly rolled in one corner, a few canned goods stacked near the back, and a small portable heater sat beside a folded American flag. Ray switched off the little radio and sat down on a crate opposite Keanu. "Didn't think I'd ever have a movie star sitting in my home," he said with a quiet chuckle. Keanu smiled faintly. "You serve this country, Ray. That makes you more of a star than most people I know." Ray shook his head. "Maybe once. These days I'm just trying to keep the battery charged so the lights stay on." He picked up a photo from beside the Bible and handed it to Keanu. It showed a younger Ray in uniform, standing next to a woman with soft brown hair and kind eyes. "That's my wife, Linda. She was my anchor through everything. Cancer took her fast 2 years ago. The world sort of fell apart after that." Keanu studied the picture for a long moment, then returned it carefully. "She looks like someone who brought light with her," he said softly. Ray smiled, the kind of smile that trembles before it fades. Yeah, she did. She believed in people even when I didn't. He looked around the van, as if embarrassed by what it had become. You'd think after all that time overseas, I'd be tougher about this. But losing her? That's the kind of war nobody trains you for. Keanu nodded slowly. I understand more than you think. He leaned forward slightly. You don't need to be tough tonight, Ray. You've carried enough. For a long moment, only the sound of the rain filled the silence. Ray stared at the window, tracing the path of the water droplets. You know what hurts the most? He said. It's not the cold or the hunger. It's being invisible. People walk by me every day, and I can see it in their eyes. They pretend I'm not there. Keanu's voice was low. You're not invisible. Not anymore. Ray looked at him, unsure what to say. Why'd you come, Keanu? You could have just sent a check or said something nice on camera, but you showed up. Why? Keanu thought for a moment before answering. Because I've seen what happens when good people are forgotten. I can't fix the world, but I can show up for one person at a time. Tonight, that person is you. Ray swallowed hard, emotion catching in his throat. The flickering lamp cast long shadows across the walls, but somehow the van didn't feel so dark anymore. Ray poured 2 small cups of instant coffee from a thermos and handed one to Keanu. The water was lukewarm, but it felt strangely comforting. Sorry, it's not the Hollywood kind, Ray said with a half smile. Keanu accepted it without hesitation. It's perfect, he replied. You'd be surprised how good a real cup of coffee tastes when there's honesty around. Ray chuckled softly. You talk like a pastor, he said, shaking his head. Maybe that's what the world needs, a movie star who reminds people to care. Keanu smiled, though his eyes remained serious. Maybe the world just needs reminders that people like you still exist. They talked for nearly an hour. Ray spoke of dusty Afghan roads, the smell of diesel and desert heat, the sound of helicopter blades that still haunted his sleep. He spoke of soldiers who never made it home, and the ones who did but couldn't find their place anymore. Keanu listened without interrupting, hands folded, his focus steady and full of respect. At one point, Ray went quiet. You know, some nights I wake up and still expect to hear her voice, he said softly. Linda used to hum this one song every time she made coffee. I keep that radio on so the silence doesn't eat me alive. Keanu's voice was gentle. That silence isn't the enemy, Ray. It's just waiting to be filled with something new. Ray looked at him, surprised by the compassion in his tone. You really believe that? I do, Keanu said simply. Because I've seen how people heal. Sometimes it starts when someone else just shows up. Ray rubbed his eyes, pretending to hide the moisture gathering there. You know, when I said what I did on that show, I didn't think anyone heard me. I heard you, Keanu said. Those 3 words landed heavier than anything Ray had heard in years. For a moment, he had to look away, gripping the edge of the seat to steady himself. Then, he smiled, faintly. Well, I guess that means I'm not invisible anymore. Keanu stood, placing a hand on his shoulder. Not even close. Get some rest, Ray. I'll check on you soon. Ray nodded slowly. You're a good man, Keanu. Don't forget that. As Keanu stepped out into the rain, the cold air hit his face, carrying the scent of oil and wet pavement. He glanced back once more at the dim light glowing from the van. The door was closed now, but the faint hum of the radio still played inside a fragile heartbeat in the night. The sun had barely risen when Keanu sat at his kitchen table, a mug of untouched coffee cooling beside his phone. The night's conversation still echoed in his mind. Ray's voice, trembling but proud. His quiet pain. His strength, hidden beneath exhaustion. Keanu took a deep breath and dialed Dwayne's number. Dwayne picked up on the second ring. His voice was rough, still waking. Keanu? It's barely 7, brother. What's up? Keanu didn't waste time. "I found him, Dwayne. I found Ray." That got Dwayne's attention. The sound of rustling sheets and a quick shuffle told Keanu he was sitting upright now. "You actually went there?" "I did," Keanu said quietly. "He's living in a van behind a grocery store. No running water, no real food, just a few cans and an old photo of his wife. He's holding himself together with dignity. But barely. He stopped, unable to finish the sentence. For a moment, there was silence on the line. Then Dwayne's voice came, steady and low. "We'll fix this. I've got people who can move mountains." Keanu smiled faintly. "You always say that." "Yeah," Dwayne said. "But this time, I mean it literally. I've got a construction crew wrapping up a project in Pasadena. They're good guys, veterans. Some of them. If we can get supplies and a small lot, we can build him something fast, something that's his." Keanu's eyes lifted toward the window, watching the pale light wash over the city skyline. "Not a charity case," he said softly. He wouldn't accept that. It has to be about dignity, about reminding him that he still matters. "Exactly," Dwayne replied. "No pity, no headlines, just respect." Keanu opened his laptop, fingers already moving. "I can handle the medical side. Get him into a veterans counseling program. I know a few people who still run those quietly. They won't make it. Bureaucratic." "Good," Dwayne said. "And I'll handle the structure. We'll make it something special, a small mobile home, easy to maintain, but with pride built into every inch, not a handout." "A home." Keanu leaned back, exhaling slowly. "How soon do you think we can make it happen?" "If I call my team today," Dwayne said confidently, "they'll start drafting blueprints before noon." Keanu smiled for the first time that morning. "Then let's do it." The two men talked for another half hour, planning like old friends with a shared purpose. By the end of the call, they had divided responsibilities. Dwayne would coordinate logistics, materials, and manpower, while Keanu would arrange medical evaluations, therapy sessions, and financial backing. Before hanging up, Dwayne's tone softened. "You know, brother, sometimes the simplest acts end up being the loudest ones." Keanu nodded quietly. "Then, let's make some noise." By noon, Dwayne had cleared his schedule. He called his construction foreman, a former Marine named Carlos Vega, and explained the situation. "We're building something personal," Dwayne said firmly. "This isn't charity. This is honor." Carlos didn't ask for more details. He simply replied, "Say when and where, boss." Meanwhile, Keanu was working from his home office. His desk was filled with folders from veteran aid programs, handwritten notes, and coffee rings from a night without sleep. He scrolled through his contact list until he reached an old friend, Dr. Angela Pratt, a psychologist who had worked with soldiers returning from deployment. He called her immediately. "Angela, I've got someone who needs help," Keanu began. "A veteran named Ray Mitchell. He's struggling, living out of his van. I don't want him pushed through a system. I want him seen." Dr. Pratt's voice softened. "If you're involved, I know it's serious. Get me his info and I'll handle the Pronix. Rest quietly. No red tape." Keanu felt a wave of relief. "Thank you. He deserves that kind of care." While Dwayne mapped out logistics, Keanu started contacting small veteran networks he had supported for years without public notice. He arranged for Ray's name to be added to a private housing assistance list, ensuring that any future bills or medical costs would be covered discreetly. It wasn't about exposure. It was about restoring a man's dignity. Across town, Dwayne walked the perimeter of a small construction yard where his team had finished a modular housing project weeks earlier. The space still smelled of lumber and sawdust. He paced slowly, picturing what the new mobile home would look like. "Nothing fancy," he said to Carlos. "Just solid, Warm and strong, like the man we're building it for. Carlos nodded. Got it. How soon do we need it? Dwayne paused. A week. Carlos raised an eyebrow. A week? Dwayne grinned. You heard me. The foreman laughed. Guess I better call the guys. As Dwayne left the site, his phone buzzed. It was Keanu. Angela's in, Keanu said. She's setting up care and follow-up. I'll make sure Ray never sees a bill. Perfect, Dwayne replied. I've got the build starting tomorrow morning. You handle the soul. I'll handle the structure. There was a pause, and then both men laughed quietly. A shared moment of purpose that didn't need explaining. When they hung up, each went back to his own corner of the city, driven by the same feeling that had followed them since that night in the studio. That kindness wasn't something you talked about, it was something you built. That evening, Keanu sat at his desk again, the city lights flickering outside his window. He opened his journal, something he rarely showed anyone. On the first clean page, he wrote only a few words. Not charity, dignity. Then he closed it and returned to his work. He typed letters to sponsors, not asking for money, but for materials, solar panels, medical-grade insulation, and durable flooring. Each message was simple and heartfelt. We're building something meaningful. Help us give a man his life back. Every message got a reply within hours. People trusted Keanu's quiet sincerity. He wasn't doing this for cameras, and everyone knew it. Across town, Dwayne's crew worked into the night under floodlights, sketching layouts on plywood and cutting panels. They laughed, shouted orders, and drank cheap coffee. But every hammer strike felt like a prayer for someone they hadn't yet met. By midnight, Keanu's phone buzzed again. It was Dwayne, video calling from the work site. Behind him, sparks flew as welders joined metal frames. See this? Dwayne said, his voice booming over the noise. This thing's gonna roll out of here like a tank made of love. Keanu smiled. You always had a way with words. Dwayne laughed. You keep doing your quiet. Magic. I'll handle the noise. They talked for a few more minutes, mostly about details. The placement of solar panels, the wheelchair ramp, the design of the small porch out front. Then Dwayne said something that stopped Keanu for a moment. You know, brother, I think this is what we were meant to do. Movies fade, but this is real. Keanu's voice was steady. Yeah, this one's going to matter. They ended the call, and Keanu stood at his window, watching the first light of dawn creep over Los Angeles. Somewhere beyond those hills, Ray Mitchell was still asleep in his van, unaware that an entire plan had been set in motion for him. He whispered to himself, "Hang on, Ray, just a little longer." At that same hour, Dwayne reviewed the blueprint one last time, his massive hands resting on the table. 1 week, he told his team. We finish in 1 week. No excuses. The crew answered with a collective, "Yes, sir." The first nail hit the wood before sunrise. From 2 different homes, 2 men worked toward a single mission, one guided by compassion, the other by determination. What began as a quiet promise in an empty studio was now alive, taking shape in steel and sweat on the foundation of simple human decency. The sound of power tools filled the air as dawn broke over the Pasadena site. Dwayne Johnson stood at the edge of the construction yard, wearing a white hard hat and dark sunglasses. Around him, a team of 24 builders, many of them veterans, worked with precision and speed. Steel beams clanged into place, generators hummed, and sawdust drifted like mist under the rising sun. "All right, people," Dwayne called out, his voice commanding but warm. "We're not just building a house. We're building a promise. A man gave everything for this country, and we're giving him something back. Something that lasts." The workers nodded. Some saluted. Others just grinned, fired up by his words. They knew this wasn't one of Dwayne's film projects or a public charity stunt. It was something personal. The materials had arrived: overnight solar panels, modular walls, and custom wiring pre-approved for mobility assistance. Everything had been paid for quietly through Keanu's anonymous foundation and Dwayne's own construction network. Dwayne walked through the framework with Carlos Vega, the foreman. "We're putting the filtration unit here," Carlos said, pointing toward the far end of the structure. "Solar grid hooks in above. You sure you want the interior finished with wood paneling? Adds time." Dwayne smiled. "It adds warmth. We're not building a bunker, Carlos. We're building a home." They shook hands, and Dwayne moved on, checking every inch of the progress. Every detail mattered to him. The smoothness of the walls, the height of the counters, the firmness of the steps leading up to the porch. Nothing was too small for his attention. "If I wouldn't want my mother living here, it's not good enough," he said more than once. Meanwhile, across town, Keanu continued visiting Ray every evening. He never mentioned the construction, never hinted at the surprise taking shape miles away. Instead, he arrived quietly, carrying 2 cups of coffee and sometimes a small meal. Ray had grown used to hearing the soft knock on his van door around 8 o'clock. "Evening Hollywood," he'd joke, waving him in. Keanu laughed each time. Not Hollywood tonight, just a friend checking in. To make his visits seem natural, Keanu had told Ray he was working on a small documentary about American veterans, an exploration of post-war life, and the unseen battles that follow. It wasn't entirely untrue. He did record their conversations with Ray's permission, though not for the public. He said it helped him remember what really mattered. The 2 men sat together most nights, under the faint glow of the van's small lamp. They talked about motorcycles, about music from the 70s, about the strange way time feels when you've seen too much of life. Slowly, the barrier between celebrity and stranger began to fade. One night, as the hum of freeway traffic blended with the soft rain outside, Ray pulled out an old harmonica from a metal box. "Used to play this in the barracks," he said, wiping the dust from its edge. "The sound drove some of the guys crazy, but it kept me sane." He played a few notes, slow, trembling, but filled with life. The tune carried a sadness that reached straight into the soul. Keanu listened quietly, hands folded. When Ray finished, he clapped softly. "That's beautiful," he said. "You ever think about recording it?" Ray chuckled. "Who'd want to listen to an old soldier wheezing through a harmonica?" "I would," Keanu replied. "And I think a lot of people would too." Ray looked at him curiously, almost suspiciously. "You really think anyone cares about this stuff anymore? About us?" Keanu took a moment before answering. "I think people forget. But forgetting doesn't mean they stop caring. Sometimes they just need someone to remind them." The conversation drifted to motorcycles, Ray's favorite subject. He used to ride with his anyway, wife Linda, through the desert on weekends. She loved the smell of dust and gasoline, Ray said, smiling faintly. Said it smelled like freedom. Keanu's eyes softened. "You ever think about riding again?" Ray laughed. "On what?" "This van's got 4 flat tires and a soul heavier than I can lift." Keanu smiled. "Maybe that'll change soon." Ray tilted his head, but Keanu's calm expression gave nothing away. "You talk funny sometimes. You know that?" Ray said. "Like you already know how the story ends." "Maybe I just hope it ends better than it started," Keanu said. Meanwhile, miles away, Dwayne's team was making remarkable progress. The frame of the mobile home had been completed. The interior was taking shape. Lightweight oak floors, reinforced insulation, and custom cabinetry with soft lighting. One corner was reserved for a small medical station, stocked with emergency supplies and medication storage. Solar panels lined the roof, ready to power the entire home off-grid. Dwayne visited daily, walking through the site with a tablet in hand, reviewing every blueprint, every measurement. He refused to leave until he was sure the structure was flawless. When Carlos mentioned they were ahead of schedule, Dwayne grinned. Good. That means we've got time to make it perfect. At the end of each day, he sent short video clips to Keanu, never showing the full picture, just enough to keep him updated. The final reveal had to stay a secret. Don't show Ray anything, Dwayne reminded him. Not even a photo. This has to hit him right in the heart. Keanu agreed. He'll never see it coming, he said with a quiet smile. The following nights passed peacefully. Keanu kept showing up, always with a new story or a quiet meal. He never stayed too long, never made Ray feel pitied. He listened more than he spoke, learning the rhythm of Ray's thoughts, the memories, the regrets, and the small sparks of hope that still flickered beneath his rough exterior. One evening, Ray shared something he hadn't told anyone before. You remind me of my son, he said suddenly, staring at the small flame of his portable heater. Keanu looked up. You have a son? Had, Ray corrected softly. He died in a car accident years ago. He was about your age when it happened. Kind, calm, always thinking before he spoke. You talk the same way he did. Keanu didn't know what to say. He simply nodded and let the silence fill the space. It wasn't uncomfortable, it was honest. After a while, Ray continued. I guess that's why I don't mind your visits. Feels like talking to him again. Keanu managed a small smile. Then I'm honored to sit here with you. That night, when Keanu left the parking lot, he lingered beside his motorcycle, staring back at the van. The faint glow of the lamp inside made it look almost peaceful. He whispered to himself, just a few more days, Ray. Just a few. More. Back at the construction site, the mobile home was nearly finished. Dwayne supervised the installation of the final details. A new water filtration system, medical storage drawers, and a solar-powered heater. The finishing touch was a small plaque mounted near the entrance that read, Welcome home, Sergeant Mitchell. Let's keep this quiet, Dwayne said to the crew. No leaks, no photos. This man deserves a real surprise. Carlos nodded. You got it, boss. Nobody's saying a word. When Dwayne looked at the finished home under the soft glow of work lights, a deep satisfaction filled his chest. It wasn't just about building something. It was about restoring faith. He called Keanu that night. Brother, it's ready. Everything's perfect. Keanu smiled through the phone. You did it, man. No, Dwayne said, his tone gentle. We did it. You gave him hope. I just built the walls to hold it. As the two hung up, a shared silence settled between them. In two different corners of Los Angeles, both men went to sleep with the same thought, burning quietly in their hearts. Tomorrow, the world would start to look different for one forgotten hero. Rain fell in steady sheets across Los Angeles that week, turning parking lots into shallow mirrors. Keanu's black motorcycle cut through the mist each evening, headlights glowing faintly through the fog. He always stopped at the same small diner before heading to the back lot where Ray lived, picking up 2 paper cups of coffee and a warm sandwich. The waitress never asked questions anymore. She simply smiled, recognizing his quiet routine. When he arrived, the van's small lamp always burned dimly in the window. Ray would wave him in, joking, You're braver than most coming out in this weather. Keanu would shrug and hand him the coffee. You've been through worse, he'd say, and Ray would laugh softly in agreement. Conversations between them had grown more comfortable. They didn't talk about fame or money, just life. Ray shared stories from his military days, the nights under endless stars in the desert, the friendships that ended too soon, the things soldiers rarely said out loud. Keanu mostly listened. He learned when to nod, when to stay silent, and when to offer just one word that carried more than a speech ever could. As the days passed, Keanu noticed how Ray's body seemed weaker, his cough sharper, but his spirit somehow burned stronger. One evening, Keanu brought him a small radio, the kind with an old-fashioned dial. "You mentioned music helps," he said. "Thought you might like this." Ray turned the knob carefully and static filled the air before an old song broke through a tune from his youth. He smiled, his eyes softening. "Haven't heard this in decades," he murmured. "Takes me back to the days when we thought we'd live forever." Keanu sat beside him, in the dim glow, the rain drumming gently on the roof. "Maybe in some ways, we do," he said. Ray gave a small laugh. "You're one of those deep thinkers, huh?" Keanu smiled. "No, I just believe that what we leave behind lasts longer than we think." Across town, Dwayne was checking updates from his phone between scenes on set. Even while rehearsing lines, he kept one eye on the construction progress. Every photo Carlos sent, each beam installed, every wall polished made him more impatient for the day they could hand over the keys. He messaged Keanu late that night. "3 days, brother. It's almost ready." Keanu read the message under the faint light of his phone, sitting in his car outside the parking lot. Through the windshield, he could see Ray's silhouette moving inside the van. He smiled faintly, whispering to himself, "Hang in there, Ray. Just a little longer." By the 3rd day, the rain hadn't stopped. The city felt slower, quieter, as if the weather itself was holding its breath. Keanu parked near Ray's van again, carrying 2 paper bags filled with soup and bread from a nearby cafe. When he knocked, the door creaked open almost instantly. Ray grinned faintly. "You're gonna rust that motorcycle if you keep this up." Keanu smiled. "Then I'll call it a fair trade." They ate in silence for a while, listening to the rain hammer the metal roof. Keanu could tell Ray was tired. The circles under his eyes had deepened, his movements slower, but he still carried himself with dignity. After a while, Ray leaned back and said, "You ever think about how life just forgets people? Like there's a shelf somewhere where the world puts you when it's done with you?" Keanu looked at him carefully. "Yeah," he said softly, "but I don't think you're on that shelf, Ray." Ray laughed bitterly. "You're kind, but let's be honest. Nobody's lining up to hear from a broken-down soldier living out of a van. I'm not." Exactly headline material. Keanu's voice was calm but firm. "Maybe not, but you're still teaching people what strength looks like." Ray froze, the words catching him off guard. He studied Keanu's face for a moment. "You really believe that?" "I do," Keanu said simply. "Every time you get up, every time you keep going, when you have every reason not to, you're showing the world what real courage looks like." Ray didn't answer. Instead, he turned his gaze to the small window, watching the rain streak down the glass. "There were nights," he whispered, "when I thought about ending it, just closing my eyes and letting the world move on without me. It would have been easier." Keanu's expression didn't change, but his heart sank. He took a slow breath. "Not yet, Ray," he said quietly. "You're still here for a reason. You're still teaching people what strength looks like." Ray swallowed hard. "You keep saying that," he said, his voice trembling. "Why?" Keanu leaned forward. "Because it's true. You don't need a camera or a crowd to change someone's life. You've already changed mine." The van went silent. The only sound was the soft patter of rain and the distant hum of traffic. Ray's hand trembled slightly as he rubbed his eyes, hiding the tears that finally escaped. "You know," he said with a broken laugh, "I think you were sent here for a reason too." Keanu smiled faintly. "Maybe we were both sent to remind each other that it's not over yet." Ray nodded slowly, and for the first time that week, his smile reached his eyes. The next few days blurred together. The rain came and went, sometimes fierce, sometimes gentle, but always there like a curtain of patience between the world and what was coming. Keanu kept his visits quiet and consistent, never missing a night. He no longer brought cameras or asked questions. He simply showed up. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they sat in silence, watching the rain bead across the windshield. One evening, Ray was in better spirits. He had shaved, cleaned up his van, even set up 2 paper cups on the dashboard before Keanu arrived. "You're late," he teased. Keanu laughed. "Traffic," Ray smirked. "You ride a motorcycle. That excuse doesn't work." They both laughed then, the kind of laughter that eased the tension of unspoken pain. It was a sound that brought warmth to the cold parking lot. As the laughter faded, Ray looked out at the storm and said, "You ever wonder if people like us, people who've been through too much, can actually start over?" Keanu thought for a long moment. "Yeah, I wonder that a lot. But I think starting over isn't about forgetting what happened. It's about learning to live with it and still choosing to move forward anyway." Ray nodded. "You talk like someone who's seen his share of storms." Keanu's eyes softened. "Maybe I have." More for a while. The van's heater hummed quietly. The flickering lamp gave everything a soft golden glow. It felt almost peaceful, 2 men from different worlds finding common ground in the stillness. Outside, somewhere across the city, Dwayne stood in the finished mobile home with Carlos and the crew. The floors shone, the appliances gleamed, and the plaque on the front wall read, "Welcome home, Sergeant Mitchell." Everything was perfect. Dwayne filmed a short message on his phone and sent it to Keanu without context. "Tomorrow." When Keanu saw the message, he felt a wave of relief. The waiting was almost over. He glanced toward the van, where Ray had dozed off mid-conversation. The soft rise and fall of his chest gave Keanu a quiet sense of peace. He whispered under his breath, "Tomorrow, Ray. Your storm ends tomorrow." He stood there for a long while, before walking away, his boots splashing through puddles, the rain washing over him. Somewhere behind him, the faint hum of the calm. Radio drifted through the cracked window, an old country song about coming home. The rain had finally stopped. The clouds above Los Angeles broke into soft gray streaks, letting in the first light of Saturday morning. The grocery store parking lot was quiet, except for the faint hum of delivery trucks in the distance. Keanu arrived early, parking his motorcycle under the same flickering lamp he had parked beneath every night that week. He turned off the engine, took a slow breath, and looked toward the van where Ray was still asleep. Today would be different. Moments later, the deep rumble of an engine rolled across the lot. Dwayne Johnson's black truck pulled in beside the motorcycle, its headlights cutting through the mist. He stepped out wearing a dark leather jacket, jeans, and his signature smile, the kind that made people feel like everything was going to be okay. "Morning, brother," he said, clapping Keanu on the shoulder. Keanu nodded. "Morning. You ready?" "Born ready," Dwayne replied, glancing toward the van. "How's he doing?" "He's tired, but holding on," Keanu said quietly. "He still thinks I'm filming a small documentary." Dwayne smirked. "Well, I guess technically he's not wrong. We just gave the documentary a better ending." Behind them, a few members of Dwayne's construction team were already setting up the surprise. They had parked the mobile home at the far end of the lot, carefully wrapping it with a massive American flag ribbon that shimmered in the light breeze. The home gleamed in the morning sun, its silver finish reflecting the sky above. Hidden behind a few cars, a small filming crew prepared to capture the moment. Keanu checked his watch. "Let's keep it simple," he said. "No speeches, no grand setup, just truth." Dwayne smiled. "Truth I can do." They waited a few minutes until they saw movement inside the van. The small door opened, and Ray stepped out, blinking against the light. He wore the same faded veteran's jacket and jeans, his silver hair sticking out from under his cap. When he saw Keanu, he smiled instantly. "Morning, Hollywood. You're early." Keanu grinned. "Couldn't sleep." Ray looked to his right and froze when he noticed Dwayne Johnson standing there. "Wait a minute," he said, pointing. "Is that Dwayne?" Extended his hand. Ray Mitchell, I've heard a lot about you. Ray looked from Dwayne to Keanu, completely stunned. You've got to be kidding me. Both of you? Keanu laughed softly. Yeah, we've been thinking, Ray. Maybe your story deserves a better ending. Ray's brow furrowed in confusion. What do you mean? Dwayne turned slightly and motioned behind him. I mean that. At the far end of the lot, workers began pulling away the tarp. The flag ribbon caught the sunlight as it unraveled, revealing the gleaming mobile home beneath it. The small crowd of nearby veterans, store employees, and passers-by gasped all at once. Ray stood frozen, eyes wide, unable to speak. His breath caught somewhere between disbelief and awe. The morning light glinted off the polished windows of the mobile home. The reflection of the flag rippled across its silver surface, making it look almost alive. Dwayne took a step closer and rested a hand on Ray's shoulder. We've been working on this all week, he said gently. Keanu told me about you, about everything you've been through, and we both agreed you've carried this country long enough. It's time someone carried you for a change. Ray blinked, still processing. This is for me? Keanu nodded. It's yours, Ray. No strings, no conditions, just a home. Ray shook his head in disbelief, his voice breaking. You're joking, right? I mean, come on. Things like this don't happen to people like me. They do now, Dwayne said softly. You earned this a long time ago. For a long moment, Ray didn't move. He stared at the mobile home like it was something out of a dream. Then his knees wavered, and he took a shaky step forward. I don't even know what to say, he whispered. You don't have to say anything, Keanu said. Just walk with us. Together, the three men walked across the parking lot. The small crowd parted quietly, giving them space. Keanu kept his hand steady on Ray's arm, as if guiding him through a moment that might otherwise feel unreal. The closer they got, the more Ray's breath trembled. The mobile home was perfect. A small ramp led to a wooden porch lined with fresh paint. A simple sign above the door read, "Welcome home, Sergeant Mitchell." On the other side, Dwayne's crew stood waiting, grinning proudly. When they reached the steps, Dwayne stopped. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small metal key. The sunlight caught it just as he placed it into Ray's open hand. This, Dwayne said, isn't charity. This is gratitude. You've already paid the price. We're just giving something back to the play. Man who gave everything. Ray stared down at the key, his fingers trembling so hard it jingled against his palm. Then he looked up, his voice trembling. You built this for me? Keanu smiled softly. We did, and we hope it feels like home. The cameras captured the moment as Ray turned to the side, wiping his eyes. I don't deserve this, he said, his voice cracking. Dwayne crouched slightly to meet his gaze. You do, every inch of it. For a few seconds, the world around them fell silent. No one moved, no one spoke. Then, slowly, the crowd began to clap. The sound grew, rising like a wave of gratitude and awe. Ray turned toward the mobile home again, eyes glistening, as if trying to believe it was real. Dwayne opened the door and stepped aside, motioning for Ray to go in first. Go ahead, brother, he said softly. It's your home now. Ray hesitated on the threshold, his hand still clutching the key like it might vanish if he let go. Finally, he turned the handle and pushed the door open. The faint scent of new wood and clean paint filled the air. Warm sunlight spilled through the wide windows, landing on the oak floor. Inside, everything gleamed: the small kitchen with shining countertops, a neatly made bed with folded blankets, and shelves lined with the few things that had survived Ray's years on the road. Ray stepped in slowly, touching the edge of the counter, then the smooth wall. This can't be real, he whispered. This just can't. Keanu followed him inside and placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. It's real, Ray. Every piece of it. It's yours." Ray's eyes darted to the table by the window, where a framed photo of his late wife sat beside a small vase of flowers. His breath caught. "Linda," he said softly, running his hand across the frame. "You remembered her." Keanu nodded. "She's part of your home too." Behind them, Dwayne leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, watching, with quiet pride. "We thought you might like some reminders of where you've been," he said. "But this place, it's about where you're going next." Ray turned back toward the two men, his face streaked with tears. "I don't know how to thank you." Dwayne grinned. "Just live, man. That's thanks enough." Outside, the applause grew louder as the crowd of veterans and neighbors gathered closer, moved by what they had witnessed. A few held small flags. Others just wiped their eyes. Someone shouted, "Welcome home, Sergeant," and the cheers spread through the crowd like a wave. Ray stood in the doorway, overwhelmed. "I thought the world had forgotten about people like me," he said, voice trembling. "But I guess I was wrong." Keanu looked him straight in the eyes. "No one who served should ever feel forgotten, Ray. You reminded us what real strength looks like." For a long moment, the three men stood there together. The soldier, the actor, and the stow builder bathed in the golden light of morning. It wasn't a press event or a movie scene. It was something pure. A moment when humanity quietly did the right thing. The applause was still echoing when Keanu reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small silver key. He held it between his fingers, the morning light catching its polished surface. The noise of the crowd faded into a hush. Keanu stepped closer to Ray, his voice gentle but firm. "This is yours," he said softly. "Your key, your home, your peace." Ray stared at the key like it was made of gold. His hands trembled as Keanu placed it into his palm. The metal felt cold, real, undeniable. For a long moment he couldn't speak. The edges of his lips quivered, and his voice came out in fragments. I don't know what to say." Dwayne stepped beside him and smiled, his tone light but full of heart. "You don't have to say anything. Just open the doors, Sergeant." Ray took a deep breath and turned toward the mobile home. The crowd quieted again, everyone instinctively giving him space. He climbed the short wooden ramp with slow, careful steps, still gripping the key like it might disappear if he blinked. When he reached the door, he hesitated, his reflection caught in the shiny new handle. He looked back at Keanu and Dwayne, both of whom nodded encouragingly. With trembling fingers, Ray slid the key into the lock and turned it. The door gave a soft click, and as he pushed it open, a warm glow spilled out. The interior of the home shimmered with life. Sunlight streamed through wide windows, illuminating a cozy living space lined with light wood panels and soft curtains. The kitchen was fully stocked. The bed was neatly made with fresh linens. On the wall near the entrance hung a polished bronze plaque that read, "Welcome home, Sergeant Mitchell." Ray stepped inside slowly, every movement careful, reverent. He ran his hand over the smooth surface of the kitchen counter, then the table, then the armrest of the small couch. His touch lingered on each one, like he needed to convince himself they were real. He turned back toward Keanu and Dwayne, standing at the doorway with quiet smiles. "You did all this?" he asked, voice cracking. Dwayne grinned and crossed his arms.
"We're just giving something back to the man who already paid too much."
The words hit Ray harder than he expected. His throat tightened, and he pressed a hand to his mouth, trying to hold back the tears that refused to be held. The cameras caught the moment perfectly. Ray standing in his new home, his shoulders shaking, tears streaming down his weathered face. Keanu stepped forward and embraced him silently. No words, no speeches. Just a long, steady hug between two men who understood what it meant to survive. The crowd outside erupted into applause, the kind that carried emotion more than noise. Even the construction crew, who had promised not to cry, were wiping at their faces. Veterans in the audience saluted quietly, their eyes filled with understanding. It wasn't just Ray's victory. It was theirs too. Inside the home, Ray still stood in Keanu's arms. His body trembled, not from weakness, but from disbelief. When he finally stepped back, he looked around again, taking in the details. There was a small bookshelf with military history books, a coffee maker on the counter, and framed photos of American landscapes. Each touch had been chosen with care. He walked slowly toward the far end of the room, where a simple wooden table stood near a window. On it sat a small folded American flag, resting beside his Bible. His knees weakened, and he sat down, burying his face in his hands. "No one's ever done anything like this for me," he said softly. "Not once, in all these years." Keanu knelt beside him. "That changes today, Ray. You've done enough giving. It's time you had something that gives back." Dwayne joined them, crouching down, so his grand, large frame was eye level with Ray. "You don't owe us a thing," he said. "You've already paid the highest price, your peace, your years, your family. We're just giving a little of it back." Ray looked between them, shaking his head slowly. "You two could have been anywhere today, on a movie set, on a red carpet. Why here?" Keanu smiled faintly. "Because this is where it matters," Dwayne nodded. "Because being a hero isn't about who's watching. It's about showing up when someone needs you." The cameras caught every word, but neither man seemed to notice. They weren't performing, they were living the moment. Ray wiped his eyes again, his voice cracking. "You've given me something I thought I'd lost a long time ago." "What's that?" Keanu asked gently. "Hope." For a moment, everything fell silent again. The construction workers stopped moving. The camera crew lowered their lenses. All anyone could do was listen to the quiet weight of that single word. Dwayne stood and placed a hand on Ray's shoulder. "Then do me a favor, Sergeant, keep it alive. Use this home, share your story, help another veteran remember what hope feels like. Deal?" Ray managed to smile through his tears. "Deal." The applause began again, louder this time. Keanu helped Ray step back outside, where sunlight now poured across the lot. The mobile home gleamed beneath it, the flag ribbon fluttering in the wind. Ray raised the key high above his head, and the crowd cheered. In that instant, the world seemed to pause. Two global icons stood beside a forgotten veteran, and the only thing that mattered was the truth of human kindness. No movie could have scripted it better. Keanu looked toward Dwayne and said quietly, "We did it." Dwayne smiled. "No, brother. He did." Ray turned toward them both, still holding the key tightly. "You gave me back my home," he said, his voice steady now. "But more than that, you gave me back myself." Keanu nodded. "Welcome home, Ray." The crowd clapped one last time, and as the sound washed over them, Ray stood tall, no longer the forgotten man in a parking lot, but the living symbol of resilience. His eyes lifted toward the sky, glistening with light, and he whispered something only the wind could hear. "Linda, I'm home." By the next morning, the world had already found the story. A short clip, filmed by a bystander at the grocery store parking lot, was posted on social media. It showed Keanu Reeves handing a small metal key to an aging veteran, while Dwayne Johnson stood beside him, smiling like a proud brother. The caption read, "Hollywood stars surprise homeless veteran with a new home. This is what real heroes look like." Within hours, it exploded across every platform imaginable. News anchors played the footage in slow motion. Commentators called it the most genuine moment caught on camera all year. Hashtags flooded the internet. Number heroes helping heroes. Number real American strength. Number Keanu and Dwayne. And number Welcome Home Sergeant Mitchell trended simultaneously across the country. Veterans organizations reposted the video with messages of gratitude. Some shared stories of their own battles after returning home. Others simply wrote, "Thank you for remembering us." In small towns and big cities alike, people gathered around TVs, phones, and computer screens to watch that one moment when a man who had lost everything stepped into a new beginning. Comment sections filled with emotion. One viewer wrote, "I haven't cried in years, but this broke me." Another said, "We don't need more superheroes in movies. We need more men like this in real life." Thousands of others echoed the same sentiment, that compassion still existed, that decency hadn't disappeared. Major news networks picked up the story by midday. Morning shows aired interviews with bystanders who had witnessed the event. One woman said, "I was just getting groceries when I saw them hug. It didn't feel staged. It felt real. You could feel it in your chest." Clips replayed on every major channel. The image of Ray holding his key high under the sunlight became an instant symbol of hope. Memes appeared online, not mocking the moment, but celebrating it. One viral post read, "The world didn't need a press conference. It just needed Keanu and Dwayne to remind us what humanity looks like." Meanwhile, Keanu and Dwayne were nowhere to be found. They didn't post about it, didn't give interviews, didn't appear on talk shows. Publicists called, news outlets begged for quotes, but both men kept silent. When one reporter finally managed to approach Keanu outside a small cafe in Burbank, his only comment was, "It's not about us, it's about remembering who we owe." Those 7 words were replayed endlessly. They became the heartbeat of the story. The proof that humility still existed in a world obsessed with headlines. Even Dwayne, who was usually active online, said nothing except one brief message on his social media page. "To those who serve, and those forgotten, you're not invisible. We see you, always." The message was shared millions of times. Veterans' families printed it out and taped it to their walls. Teachers used it in classrooms to talk about kindness and gratitude. Churches mentioned it in sermons. A high school principal in Kansas opened his morning announcements by reading it aloud. It was no longer just a viral moment. It was a reminder of the power of simple decency and how 2 men's quiet actions could ripple across a nation that had almost forgotten how to feel. By nightfall, the story had reached every corner of the country. Cable news anchors called it a rare moment of sincerity in a cynical age. Commentators who usually argued over everything agreed for once this was something good. Even late-night hosts dropped their usual sarcasm to play the clip, letting the silence between the cheers speak for itself. Across America, veterans' halls streamed the video during evening gatherings. Old soldiers sat shoulder to shoulder, some with tears in their eyes, watching as one of their own was given back a piece of dignity. "That could have been any of us," one man said softly, raising his glass toward the screen. And maybe that's the point. Social media continued to overflow with emotion. A young Marine wrote, "I've never met Ray Mitchell, but tonight I feel like I know him. Thank you for showing the world we still matter." A nurse posted a photo of her father, also a veteran, with the caption, "He smiled, watching this for the first time in years." Thousands responded, sharing their own stories, their own losses, their own gratitude. Ray himself had no idea how far the moment had traveled. He had no phone, no social accounts, no clue that millions were seeing his face on screens around the world. He spent that evening sitting on the porch of his new home, wrapped in a blanket, looking out at the sunset. Keanu and Dwayne had already left, quietly and without fanfare. There were no camera crews, now just peace. Somewhere in Los Angeles, Keanu scrolled briefly through a few of the headlines on his laptop before closing it. He didn't smile, but there was a warmth in his chest. He wasn't interested in being praised. He just hoped that, somewhere out there, another veteran would be helped because of this. Dwayne called him later that night. "You seeing what's happening?" he asked, his deep laugh echoing through the phone. Keanu replied, "Yeah, it's humbling." Dwayne paused for a moment. "You know, I've been in a lot of movies where we save the world, but this "This is the one that'll stick with me," Keanu said quietly. "Same here." Neither man said another word for a while. They didn't need to. The silence between them was filled with purpose. By the end of the week, the clip had surpassed 100 million views. People called it the moment that made America remember. Talk shows, podcasts, and newspapers continued to discuss it, not for gossip, but for meaning. The simplicity of it, the quiet giving, the humility, the focus on a forgotten man was what moved people most. As one journalist wrote, "In a world obsessed with spotlight heroes, it took two men stepping out of it to remind us what heroism really looks like." And though neither Keanu nor Dwayne spoke again publicly about that day, their silence said enough. Across the nation, in living rooms, classrooms, and veteran centers, one phrase from that moment continued to echo. "It's not about us. It's about remembering who we owe." A month later, the stage lights of American Courage Live glowed brighter than ever. The audience filled every seat, buzzing with anticipation. The host stood center stage, his tone reverent and proud. "Last time these gentlemen were here," he said, "we didn't realize we were witnessing history. Today, they've come back, and they didn't come alone." The applause erupted instantly as Keanu Reeves and Dwayne Johnson walked out together, side by side. But the real surprise came when the third guest followed them. Ray Mitchell, wearing clean clothes, standing tall, his eyes alive with confidence. The studio lights reflected off his silver hair, and his smile carried the quiet dignity of a man who had found peace again. The crowd rose to their feet before the host could even continue. The applause grew thunderous, filling the room like a wave. Ray looked overwhelmed, but deeply moved. He leaned slightly toward Keanu and whispered, "I don't think I've ever had this many people clap for me in my life." Keanu smiled warmly. "You earned it." When the crowd finally settled, the host gestured for them to take their seats. "It's an honor to have you back," he began. "Last time, you told a story that broke our hearts. But what happened afterward, well, it rebuilt them." The studio screens lit up with clips from the viral video. Keanu handing Ray the key, Dwayne standing proudly beside him. The moment of tears and applause. The audience watched in silence, many visibly emotional. When the montage ended, the host turned to Ray. "So tell us, Sergeant Mitchell, what's changed since that day?" Ray took a breath and looked around the room. His voice, though soft, carried clearly. "I stopped feeling invisible," he said simply. "That's what changed. I wake up every morning knowing that somebody still sees me. And that feeling, it's something I can't describe." The audience responded with a standing ovation. A few people in the front row wiped their eyes. The host placed a hand over his heart. "That's powerful, Ray. Truly powerful." Ray nodded modestly. "I don't think it was just about me. It was about every man and woman who came home from war and wondered if their country still remembered them. Now, I know at least two people who never forgot." The camera panned to Keanu and Dwayne. Both men sat quietly, smiling. Dwayne reached over and gave Ray's shoulder a reassuring pat. "You remind us why we do what we do," he said. "You're the real hero here." Ray chuckled softly. "Well, I don't know about that, but I'll take it." The audience laughed through their tears, and the host smiled, sensing the perfect balance of emotion and warmth. "Gentlemen," he said, "this studio has seen a lot of guests, but I don't think it's ever seen this much heart." During the break, the cameras powered down, and the studio crew moved quietly around the set. Keanu took a step toward one of the camera operators and offered a sincere handshake. "Thank you," he said softly, "for not turning this into a spectacle, for letting the story speak for itself." The operator smiled, clearly moved. "Sir, it was an honor to film it." Dwayne joined him with a bottle of water, laughing as he handed one to Ray. "You better get used to this, Sergeant." I think you just became the most famous man in America. Ray chuckled, shaking his head. Never thought I'd be on TV twice in my life, and definitely not for something like this. Keanu smiled. That's the beautiful part. You earned your moment. All we did was show up. When the cameras rolled again, the host leaned forward in his chair. So, Dwayne, Keanu, tell us what inspired all of this. You could have just made a donation or called a foundation, but you chose to do it yourselves. Dwayne shrugged modestly. Because sometimes, it's not about writing a check. It's about standing beside someone and saying, "We see you." Money can help, sure, but presence changes lives. The host nodded. And Keanu, you've always been known for your quiet acts of kindness, but this one touched the entire world. How did it feel seeing the reaction? Keanu hesitated for a moment before answering. I think what moved me most was that people didn't focus on us. They focused on him, on Ray. That's how it should be. The world's full of incredible people we walk past every day without realizing it. The audience applauded again, many standing. Ray wiped his eyes, clearly overwhelmed by the love filling the room. The host smiled warmly. Ray, my friend, how's life been since that day? Ray leaned closer to the microphone. Peaceful, he said. I have a roof, a bed, and a reason to wake up. But what means most is knowing that people cared enough to remind me I still matter. The audience erupted into cheers. The host wiped a tear from his own eye. That might be the most powerful thing I've heard on this show, he said. After the taping ended, the three men lingered backstage. The atmosphere was relaxed now, full of laughter and camaraderie. Crew members approached shyly to shake Ray's hand, thanking him for his service. Dwayne grinned as he tossed a protein bar toward Keanu. You realize what you've started, right? Every veteran in the country is writing to me now. Keanu laughed. That's a good problem to have. Yeah, Dwayne said, smiling. But next time, we're building 10 of these homes. You in? Keanu smiled back. You know I am. Ray stood between them, looking from one to the other. You two act like brothers, he said. Dwayne chuckled. After everything we've built together, we might as well be. Keanu nodded. Family isn't always blood, Ray. Sometimes it's the people who show up when you need them most. Ray's eyes softened. Then I guess I've got family again. Dwayne threw an arm around his shoulders, grinning. You bet you do, brother. As the three men walked out of the studio into the cool evening air, the neon signs of the city flickered around them. It felt like a full circle. The same studio, where a broken story had begun, was now the place where it had been rewritten. For the first time in years, Ray Mitchell felt whole. The story didn't end at the studio. In the weeks that followed, the letters started pouring in. Veterans wrote from hospitals, shelters, and small towns across the country. Families of soldiers sent thank you notes, describing how the story had rekindled their faith in people. Even construction workers from other states offered to help build homes for the next Ray. Keanu and Dwayne met again in a small cafe on Sunset Boulevard to talk about what came next. There were no agents, no lawyers, just 2 cups of black coffee and a shared conviction. Dwayne leaned forward across the table. The response has been overwhelming, he said. But I keep thinking, what if we made this permanent? Not just one story, not just one man. Keanu nodded. Something sustainable. A project that keeps giving. Dwayne's grin widened. Exactly. A home for every forgotten hero. And that's how it began. They called it the Courage Project. Not a charity, not a campaign, but a mission. Their goal was simple: to build small, sustainable homes for homeless veterans across the United States. Homes that symbolized dignity, not pity. They refused to involve corporations or large sponsors. The moment money becomes the focus, we lose the heart, Keanu said during one of their first meetings. Instead, they pooled their own resources to start. Keanu sold one of his custom motorcycles to fund the first build. Dwayne contributed materials and construction labor from his company. They set up a modest website, no flashy graphics, just a quiet message that read, "If you believe every veteran deserves a home, join us." Within days, the site crashed from too many visitors. Donations poured in not from billionaires or brands, but from ordinary Americans, retired teachers, farmers, nurses, small business owners. Each sent what they could. Some gave $5, some $500. Every message attached carried the same note of gratitude. Thank you for reminding us that good still exists. Volunteers began signing up from every state. Carpenters, electricians, and truck drivers offered their time. Students started fundraisers at schools. Even biker clubs organized charity rides, inspired by Keanu's love for the open road. The first official construction site opened just outside San Diego, on a patch of land donated by a local veteran who said, "It's about time this ground served something good again." Dwayne was there for the groundbreaking, swinging the first hammer himself. "This isn't about charity," he told the small crowd gathered under a makeshift tent. "It's about courage, the kind that lives quietly inside people like Ray, who remind us what we stand for." Meanwhile, Keanu kept his focus on connection. He visited hospitals, veteran centers, and shelters, meeting men and women who had fallen through the cracks. He listened to their stories, without cameras, promising only to remember their names. One night, when asked by a volunteer why he kept visiting in person, he said simply, "Because I don't want to forget what this fight is really about." By spring, the Courage Project had become more than a mission. It was a movement. Construction sites had sprung up in California, Texas, Georgia, and Ohio. Each new home was built by volunteers who brought not only tools and materials, but heart. Local communities provided food and furniture. Veterans who had once been helped now returned to build for others, forming a chain of compassion that kept growing. Keanu traveled between locations on his motorcycle, wearing his old leather jacket and a black helmet. He never announced his visits, but word always spread after he left. Volunteers would find a handwritten note pinned to a wooden beam that simply said, "Keep building. Every wall you raise lifts a soul." Those notes became a signature of his presence, small reminders that kindness didn't need an audience. Meanwhile, Dwayne turned his attention to outreach. Between filming commitments, he recorded short public messages from construction sites, his deep voice resonating with sincerity. "You don't need a cape to be a hero," he said in one clip. "Check on your neighbors. Look out for the forgotten ones. That's how we change things." His videos went viral not because of production value, but because they felt real. Every word carried the weight of someone who meant it. Donations continued to pour in, but Keanu and Dwayne stuck to their original promise. No corporate logos, no political endorsements, no red carpet galas. "This is built by people for people," Dwayne said firmly during one local news interview. "We don't need middlemen. We just need hearts that care." By midsummer, the first dozen homes had been completed. Each had a small plaque on the front door engraved with the same words, "Built with courage for those who served." The houses weren't luxurious, but they were strong, clean, and built to last. They came with solar panels, filtered water, and enough space for veterans to start fresh. At one dedication ceremony in Arizona, Keanu helped a Marine named Thomas hang his first photo on the wall, a picture of his wife and kids. "Feels good to see them back where they belong," Thomas said, his voice breaking. Keanu nodded and smiled. That's what home should do, bring people back to themselves. Each new story inspired more hands to join. Retired builders worked alongside young students. Churches sent volunteers. Biker clubs escorted materials across state lines, calling themselves the Road Guardians. And when Dwayne visited one site unannounced, he found an entire crew wearing shirts that read, "Faith in Humanity, Restored by Courage." One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills of Nevada, Keanu stood by one of the nearly finished homes. The smell of sawdust filled the air. He pulled out his phone and texted Dwayne a photo of the sunset over the construction site. "We're making a dent in the darkness," he wrote. Dwayne replied a moment later, "Then let's keep swinging the hammer until there's light everywhere." The Courage Project was no longer about two men helping one veteran. It had become a living promise, proof that compassion, when acted upon, could rebuild more than homes. It could rebuild hope. The auditorium was packed. Banners bearing the emblem of the Courage Project hung from the walls, and the hum of hundreds of people filled the space with quiet anticipation. Veterans, volunteers, families, and supporters from across the country had gathered for the project's first public event. On stage stood a simple wooden podium, flanked by two American flags. It wasn't a glamorous ceremony, but that was exactly how Keanu and Dwayne wanted it: simple, honest, human. In the front row, Keanu sat with his hands folded, his eyes calm but focused. Beside him, Dwayne rested his elbows on his knees, his massive frame still as stone. They weren't there to be honored. They were there for the man walking slowly toward the microphone. Ray Mitchell looked different now. He wore a clean black suit and a silver tie that shimmered under the lights. His posture was steady, his expression confident, but humble. The crowd rose to their feet as he reached the stage, the applause rolling like thunder. Ray raised a hand, smiling modestly. "Thank you," he said. "You can sit down. I'm not here to make a speech. I'm here to tell a story." The room fell silent. He looked out at the audience, scanning the faces: young soldiers, old veterans, families clutching photos of loved ones. "A few months ago," he began, "I was sleeping in a van behind a grocery store. I had lost my wife, my job, and my home. I didn't think anyone even remembered I existed." His voice wavered slightly, but he steadied himself with a deep breath. "And then, one night, a knock came on my door." Every eye in the room turned instinctively toward Keanu. Ray smiled at him. It wasn't a TV crew or a reporter. It was just a man with kind eyes and a cup of coffee. He sat with me, not to talk about himself, but to listen. For the first time in a long time, I felt human again. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Ray continued, "A week later, that man showed up again, but this time, he brought a friend. You all know him." He glanced at Dwayne, who gave a small nod and grin. "They told me they'd been thinking about my story and that maybe it deserved a better ending." Ray paused, letting the weight of the words hang. "I thought it was a joke. But when I saw what they'd done, when I saw that new home sitting in the same lot where my old van used to be, I realized something. They didn't just give me a roof. They gave me my country back." The audience erupted in applause. Some stood, some cried, but everyone felt the meaning of his words. Ray waited for the scroll. Applause to quiet before continuing. "You see, a house is just walls and wood," he said, his voice firm and clear. "But a home, that's something deeper. It's a place where you're seen, where you're remembered." And these two men reminded me that I still belong somewhere. He glanced at Keanu and Dwayne again, his expression softening. They didn't do it for cameras. They didn't do it for fame. They did it because they remembered something this country used to be built on: compassion. The audience listened, hanging on every word. Ray took a small pause, steadying his hands on the podium. "I used to think patriotism was just flags and anthems, but I've learned it's not about the noise, it's about the quiet things. The people who show up without asking for anything in return. The people who still believe that helping one person matters." A hush fell over the room. In that silence, the weight of his message spread like a heartbeat through every seat. "I know some of you out there have been where I was," Ray continued. "You've felt invisible. You've wondered if anyone cares. I can't promise you that life gets easy, but I can promise you this: there are still people out there who will knock on your door just to make sure you're okay. A soft murmur of emotion moved through the audience. Many veterans nodded, their faces lined with both grief and recognition. Ray smiled faintly. The Courage Project isn't about me. It's about all of us. The ones who gave, the ones who lost, and the ones who still fight to remember what we stand for. I may have been the first man they helped, but I won't be the last. Because kindness doesn't end, it spreads. He looked down for a moment, his eyes glistening, then raised his head again. So tonight, I just want to say thank you. Not just to these two men, but to everyone here who's building, volunteering, donating, and believing. Tall again. You're reminding us that America doesn't forget its own. The crowd rose to their feet in thunderous applause. But it wasn't the usual applause of a show or a ceremony. It was raw, grateful, unified, hundreds of people moved by a single man's truth. Veterans began chanting, USA. But it wasn't about politics or parties. It was about unity. The kind that comes from shared decency and hope. Keanu wiped at his eyes, unable to hide the emotion on his face. Dwayne clapped slowly, his massive hands echoing across the room. When the chant grew louder, Keanu leaned toward Dwayne and whispered, "This is what it was all for." Dwayne nodded. "Yeah, brother. Every nail, every mile, every drop of sweat it was for this." When the applause finally faded, Ray stepped away from the podium. The host approached. But Ray waved him off, turning instead to the two men waiting in the front row. He walked down the steps, one slow step at a time, and embraced them both. For a long moment, they stood there, three men from completely different worlds, bound together by one simple truth, that kindness could rebuild what war and time had taken. As the audience stood again in ovation, cameras captured the image that would soon define the Courage Project. Ray between Keanu and Dwayne, their arms linked, a faint American flag waving gently behind them. That night, the story of a forgotten veteran found new life, and the message that echoed across the nation was simple: heroes don't fade when others remember to stand beside them. The sun was low on the horizon when Keanu pulled into the grocery store parking lot, where everything had begun. The same cracked pavement stretched before him, now quiet and empty. The faint hum of traffic in the distance blended with the soft ticking of his motorcycle's cooling engine. He parked beneath the flickering lamp, the one that had glowed above Ray's van on those long, rainy nights. The air smelled faintly of asphalt and dust. For a moment, Keanu just stood there, taking it all in. The space that once held despair now held memory. He walked slowly across the lot, his boots scuffing against the ground. A few faded tire marks still cut across the concrete, faint reminders of the van that had once been Ray's home. Near the edge of the curb, something caught his eye. An old folded American flag, slightly weathered, but still dignified. Someone had left it there, resting gently against the wall of the grocery store. Keanu knelt down and picked it up with care. He brushed off the dust and held it for a long moment, his reflection visible in the silver of a nearby car window. The flag was small, the kind that could fit inside a glove compartment or be carried on a dashboard. He remembered the one Ray used to keep by his bed. Maybe this was it. Maybe Ray had left it behind as a quiet goodbye. He folded it neatly, the same way his father once taught him when he was a boy. Each crease precise, every edge aligned. When he finished, he pressed the folded flag to his chest for a brief second, then walked back to his motorcycle and placed it carefully on the seat. The wind picked up slightly, carrying the faint scent of rain. Keanu leaned against the bike, his thoughts drifting back to the night he first met Ray. The uncertainty in his eyes, the tired humor in his voice, the way he'd still offered him a cup of instant coffee even when he had almost nothing left. He smiled softly. "You did it, Ray," he murmured. "You made it home." The parking lot was quiet, except for the rustle of leaves. Across the street, a few lights flickered on inside a small diner, where people laughed over dinner. Life had moved on, as it always did. But for Keanu, this place still carried a heartbeat, a reminder that even the smallest corners of the world could hold the biggest stories. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out and saw Dwayne's name flashing on the screen. He answered, his voice calm.
Hey, brother, where are you, man?
Dwayne's cheerful tone rolled through the speaker. We're having dinner with some new volunteers from the Courage Project. They're excited to meet you. Keanu looked around the empty lot one last time before replying quietly, I'll be there. Just wanted to say goodbye to an old friend first. Keanu stayed a little longer after the call ended, letting the hum of the evening fill the silence. The streetlights flickered to life one by one, washing the lot in a dim orange glow. He walked a slow circle around the spot where Ray's van had once been parked, his boots brushing against bits of gravel. It wasn't sadness that lingered in him now. It was gratitude, quiet and steady, like the pulse of something eternal. He crouched near the curb where the oil stains had darkened the concrete and placed his hand over the cold surface. This was your ground for a long time, he said softly. Now, it's just a story. But what a story you left behind. He stood again, slipping the folded flag into his jacket. The weight of it felt symbolic, like carrying a small piece of every man and woman who had once been forgotten. As he fastened his helmet, he noticed a family walking toward the store, a father holding his daughter's hand. She couldn't have been more than 6 years old. She pointed at him shyly, whispering something to her dad. The man smiled and called out, You're Keanu Reeves, right? Keanu nodded with a polite smile. Yeah, just out for a ride. The father hesitated for a moment, then said, I just wanted to say thank you. What you and Dwayne did for that veteran my dad served too. Watching that story with him, it meant a lot. Keanu's smile softened. Tell your dad we said thank you for his service and for reminding us why this matters. The little girl grinned and waved. My daddy says heroes don't wear capes, but I think they ride motorcycles. Keanu laughed quietly. Maybe just when they're lucky. As the family walked off, he looked up at the sky. Dusky purple, streaked with faint traces of orange. He thought about how moments like these started small and grew beyond anyone's control, like ripples spreading from a single drop of kindness. What began as a late-night visit to a forgotten man had turned into a movement that built homes, restored faith, and healed wounds no one could see. He turned the key in the ignition, and the motorcycle rumbled to life. The folded flag rested securely beneath the bungee cords on the back seat. Before leaving, he took one last glance at the empty lot. It wasn't lonely anymore. It felt sacred, like a memorial that didn't need stone or marble, only memory. As he rode through the city, the wind pressed against his jacket and whispered through the streets. Neon lights blurred past restaurants, motels, gas stations, all ordinary places that suddenly looked extraordinary. He thought about Ray's words during his speech. They gave me my country back. Keanu understood now that Ray hadn't meant geography. He had meant belonging, the invisible thread that tied one person's compassion to another's hope. His phone buzzed again in his pocket as he stopped at a red light. It was a text from Dwayne. Table's ready. Don't be late, brother. We're feeding the new recruits builders, not bodybuilders. Keanu smiled at the screen. On my way, he typed back. Brought something with me you'll want to see. The light turned green. He revved the engine and pulled into the open road. The wind carried away the last echoes of the past, but the memory stayed with him: the quiet parking lot, the man who'd once called it home, and the lesson he'd left behind. As he rode toward the diner where Dwayne and the volunteers waited, Keanu realized something simple, yet profound. Good deeds don't end when the moment does. They live on, passed quietly from one heart to another, like the flag now fluttering faintly on the back of his motorcycle. He whispered to the night, "Goodbye, Ray. You started something bigger than all of us." Then he rode on, disappearing into the lights of the city, carrying both the silence of remembrance and the sound of a future still being built. Months passed, and the story of the Courage Project continued to move through the country like a quiet current that no one could stop. What had begun with one act of compassion between three men had become a movement of thousands across towns, big and small. People started creating their own versions of what Keanu and Dwayne had built, different names, same purpose. The goal was simple: help those who served, remember those who were forgotten, and rebuild dignity, one home, one heart at a time. In Kansas, a group of high school students launched a fundraiser called Homes of Honor. They sold handmade bracelets with the words, "You're not forgotten," engraved on them. Within 2 weeks, they raised enough money to buy a plot of land where 2 tiny homes would soon be built. The students documented the process on social media, and when Keanu saw the video, he sent them a handwritten note of encouragement. It read, "You proved that compassion doesn't have an age limit. Keep building." The students framed it and hung it in their classroom. Out west in Arizona, a biker club called the Iron Guardians organized a 500-mile charity ride. Riders from 7 states joined, wearing patches embroidered with a simple emblem, a flag wrapped around a heart. They rode through highways, deserts, and small towns, raising funds for veterans in need. Along the way, they stopped at one of the new Courage Project homes, delivering supplies and sharing stories with the residents. One veteran told them, "It's been a long time since I've heard engines rumbling for something good." Construction companies began volunteering their crews and equipment, calling it Operation Build Back. In Texas, a retired foreman donated an entire week's worth of materials. In Colorado, an architect offered to design accessible homes for disabled veterans, free of charge. One local news station aired a segment showing dozens of builders hammering nails into freshly cut beams while holding photos of their fathers, brothers, and friends who had served. The sight brought tears to viewers across the country. Meanwhile, Keanu and Dwayne kept their promise to stay humble. They didn't accept awards or attend galas. Instead, they spent their time on the road quietly visiting new projects, shaking hands with volunteers, and thanking families who had turned compassion into action. Cameras sometimes caught them at these sites, but the footage always felt genuine, unpolished, and deeply human. One viral video montage captured the heart of it all. It began with a clip of Ray's old van, followed by shots of dozens of finished homes across America. The music swelled as scenes of Keanu and Dwayne meeting veterans played in sequence, smiling, laughing, helping carry furniture, sharing meals. Children waved flags outside new front doors. Volunteers posed for photos with hands over their hearts. Then the screen faded to black, and Ray's voice filled the silence. It was a clip from his speech months earlier. "You can lose your house. You can lose your job. You can even lose your health," he said softly. "But when someone remembers you, you're home again." The montage ended with a single frame, a close-up of the Courage Project emblem, a pair of hands holding a small house surrounded by stars. Across the screen, white letters appeared. "Keep building. Keep remembering." That message spread faster than any advertisement ever could. Schools, churches, and even small-town diners replayed it daily. Veterans centers used it to start discussions. People who had never picked up a hammer before found themselves showing up to volunteer. The ripple had started, and it was growing stronger with every heart it touched. In the months that followed, the numbers didn't just grow, they multiplied. More than 50 communities joined the mission in less than a year. Local leaders organized build days, where entire neighborhoods came together to paint walls, plant gardens, and set up furniture for veterans moving into their new homes. Children wrote welcome letters that were left on kitchen tables. One note written in crayon, simply said, "Thank you for being brave so we can be free." Keanu visited one of these sites quietly, without fanfare. He arrived at dawn, dressed in a faded denim jacket and work boots. A group of volunteers recognized him immediately, but instead of crowding around, they handed him a hammer. He smiled and joined in, driving nails into a frame beside a teenage boy and his grandfather. The two had come from out of state just to help. "I wanted my grandson to see what it means to give back," the older man said. Keanu nodded. "That's the best lesson you can teach." Later that day, Dwayne arrived unexpectedly, his laughter echoing across the site as he helped lift a wall into place. "We've got sunlight, sweat, and strong backs," he joked. "That's the recipe for hope." Someone filmed the moment, and it became another viral clip, not because of celebrity, but because it captured what unity looked like in motion. Two of the world's most famous men hammering side by side with strangers, building something real. The movement spread internationally before long. Messages came from Canada, the UK, and even Australia, where veteran organizations reached out, asking how to replicate the Courage Project model in their own countries. Keanu and Dwayne refused to franchise it. "It's not ours to own," Keanu explained in a short interview. "It belongs to anyone who cares enough to build." Back in Los Angeles, the original Courage Project headquarters remained modest, a rented warehouse filled with lumber, paint, and handwritten thank you notes taped to the walls. One entire section had become a photo display, each picture showing a veteran standing in front of their new home. Some smiled proudly, others stood solemnly, but all radiated the same quiet strength. In the center hung a framed photograph of Ray Mitchell, holding his house key high under the sunlight. One evening, as Keanu locked up the warehouse, he stopped in front of that picture. He looked at Ray's smiling face for a long moment and whispered, "You started this, my friend." Behind him, Dwayne approached, carrying a rolled-up blueprint. "New site in Chicago," he said with a grin. "They're calling it Ray's Row. 20 homes to start." Keanu smiled, shaking his head in disbelief. "He'd love that." "Yeah," Dwayne said softly. "He'd probably tell us we're still not done." Keanu laughed quietly. "Then, I guess we keep building." Outside, the night sky stretched endlessly above them, dotted with stars. The air smelled of sawdust and fresh paint, the scent of work still unfinished. As they walked toward their trucks, Dwayne glanced at Keanu. "You realize, brother, this thing's bigger than both of us now." Keanu looked back toward the warehouse lights, glowing faintly behind them. "That's the point," he said. "It's supposed to be." Across the country, new homes continued to rise. Hammers struck in rhythm, saws buzzed through wood, and laughter filled the air at construction. Sites that had once been silent lots. In every city, in every town, the same unspoken message took root. When one act of kindness begins, it doesn't end, it echoes. And somewhere, perhaps in the quiet beyond words, the spirit of Ray Mitchell seemed to whisper through every open window and every new foundation poured, reminding them all, "You're home again." A full year had passed since that morning in the grocery store parking lot, when one forgotten veteran's life changed forever. The Courage Project had grown far beyond what anyone could have imagined. Across the country, more than 200 homes stood proudly beneath open skies, each one a symbol of what compassion could build. But for Keanu and Dwayne, the most meaningful part of it all wasn't the number of homes, it was the people those homes had healed. On a bright spring morning, a crowd gathered at the original build site just outside San Diego. The air buzzed with warmth and gratitude. Flags lined the perimeter of the property, and a stage had been set up in front of the first Courage Project home. It was the one that had started it all, the home built for Sergeant Ray Mitchell. Ray was there early, as usual. He wore his veteran's jacket, pressed and clean, with his name stitched neatly above the heart. But today, instead of standing quietly in the back, like he once might have, He moved confidently through the crowd, shaking hands, greeting volunteers, and laughing with the younger veterans he now mentored. His health had improved, his posture was strong, and his eyes had regained the light of purpose. He had become one of the pillars of the Courage Project, volunteering full-time to guide new recipients, help organize builds, and even speak to schools about the meaning of service. He didn't talk about himself much, he talked about others, about what the project had done for them. "This isn't about what was given to me," he often said. "It's about what we can keep giving forward." As the crowd settled, a familiar rumble echoed in the distance. All heads turned toward the road, and a wave of cheers erupted as Keanu's motorcycle and Dwayne's black truck pulled onto the gravel path. The two men climbed out to thunderous applause. They greeted volunteers like old friends, embracing them, shaking hands, thanking every worker and builder who had made the dream real. When Ray saw them, he grinned wide and moved toward them, his step brisk despite his age. Keanu extended his hand, but Ray brushed it aside and hugged him instead. "Good to see you, son," Ray said warmly. "You too, Sergeant," Keanu replied. Dwayne clapped him on the shoulder. "Look at you, man, you're glowing. You've been busy." Ray chuckled. "You know me. Couldn't sit around and do nothing. You two built the house, but I've been making sure it's never empty." They all laughed together. Behind them, a local band began to play soft patriotic music as the ceremony prepared to begin. The mayor spoke first, followed by several veterans who had received new homes. Each told their story briefly. Stories of hardship, recovery, and hope. Every one of them ended with the same sentiment: "Thank you." Finally, the host announced, "We have two very special guests who'd like to say a few words." The crowd rose to their feet again. As Keanu and Dwayne walked to the stage, Keanu went first. He spoke humbly, as he always did, keeping his words short and sincere. "This project isn't about fame or headlines or any of us standing here," he said. "It's about remembering that we're one family, and families take care of their own." The audience applauded, many nodding with tears in their eyes. Dwayne stepped up next, his deep voice steady and filled with warmth. "We've built homes," he said, "but what we really built was connection. Every wall here has a story. Every nail holds a memory. That's what America's about. It's not perfect, but when we stand together, we make it better." The applause swelled again, echoing off the nearby hills. When the applause faded, Keanu smiled and motioned toward the side of the stage. "There's one more person who needs to speak today," he said, "because without him, none of this would exist." Ray froze, caught off guard. The host gestured for Tim to come forward, and the audience erupted in cheers as he walked up to the microphone. He glanced back at Keanu and Dwayne, shaking his head. "You two never stop surprising me," he said, drawing laughter from the crowd. He steadied himself at the podium, adjusting the microphone slightly. "A year ago," he began, "I didn't think I'd be standing anywhere like this. I didn't think I'd be standing at all. I was just trying to survive. Then two men showed up not as stars, not as heroes, but as brothers. And they reminded me that my story wasn't over." The audience went quiet, listening intently. Ray's voice carried the weight of experience, but also something new: hope. "Since then, I've watched hundreds of people find what I found that day: belonging. These homes aren't charity. They're proof that someone still cares." He paused, his eyes misting. "When I served overseas, I fought for my country. But these men," he said, looking at Keanu and Dwayne, "they reminded me that my country still stands for something worth fighting for." The crowd rose to its feet in a thunderous ovation. Veterans saluted him. Families wiped their tears. The moment stretched into something sacred, bigger than a speech, bigger than the stage itself. Dwayne stepped forward then, holding a small velvet cover draped over a metal plaque. He smiled at Ray. "You've been calling this place home for a year, brother," he said. "But today, we want to call it yours, in a different way." He and Keanu pulled the cover off together, revealing the engraved plaque beneath. The crowd gasped as they read the words, "The Ray Mitchell Initiative, built by the people who remembered." Ray stared at it for a long moment. His lips parted, but no sound came out. He touched the plaque gently, tracing his name with trembling fingers. When he finally looked up, tears glistened in his eyes. "I don't deserve this," he whispered. Keanu shook his head. "You earned it a long time ago." Dwayne smiled. "You didn't just inspire a project, Ray. You built a movement. From now on, every new home we raise will carry your name." Ray's breath caught. He straightened his back, his old military posture returning instinctively. Slowly, he brought his hand to his forehead in a crisp salute. The gesture was silent, but it spoke louder than words. Keanu returned the salute quietly. Dwayne placed his hand over his heart. For a few moments, no one in the audience moved. Then, one by one, the crowd began to applaud again, soft at first, then stronger, building until it became a wave of emotion that filled the entire site. Veterans stood shoulder to shoulder, some saluting, others clapping through tears. Ray lowered his hand, his voice breaking as he spoke again. "If there's one thing I've learned, it's this: you can lose everything. Your house, your job, even your health. But if someone remembers you, if someone stands beside you, you're already home." Keanu put a hand on his shoulder. "You said that once before," he said softly. "And now the world's listening." As the sun dipped low and golden light washed over the crowd, Ray stood between them, once a forgotten soldier, now the heart of a national movement. The applause rose one final time, not for fame or spectacle, but for a simple truth rediscovered. Kindness builds nations, just as surely as courage defends them. The sun hung low over the hills as the crowd slowly began to disperse from the one-year ceremony. The air was filled with that peaceful quiet that only comes after something meaningful has been said and deeply felt. At the edge of the property, Keanu stood with his hands in his pockets, looking down the long gravel road lined with new homes. Each one had a small American flag by the porch and a welcome mat waiting for someone's first step inside. Dwayne walked up beside him, a water bottle in hand, his usual grin replaced by something softer. Together, they stood silently, watching a line of veterans walk toward their new homes, their families following close behind. Laughter carried on the wind. Kids ran across the grass, chasing one another, their sneakers thudding against the soil that had once been nothing but an empty lot. Keanu exhaled slowly. "You know," he said quietly, "I used to think that the best thing an actor could do was make people feel something through a story. This is life." Dwayne nodded, his deep voice steady. "You didn't just play a hero this time, brother. You became one." Keanu shook his head, smiling faintly. "No, we just helped people remember what heroes really look like." He gestured toward the veterans in the distance, their silhouettes bathed in gold light. "They're right there." A gentle breeze swept through the rows of homes, fluttering the flags. Keanu turned to Dwayne. "You think this will last?" Dwayne smiled. "Hope always does. You just have to keep rebuilding it." They stood in silence again, watching one particular moment unfold. A veteran in a wheelchair, being wheeled into his new home by his daughter. She was crying, and when she reached the doorway, she bent down and hugged him tightly. The crowd nearby applauded softly. Dwayne cleared his throat, his voice low. "You see that right there? That's what makes every long day worth it." Keanu nodded. "We didn't build homes," he said slowly. "We built hope." Dwayne looked out at the scene and added quietly, "And hope's the hardest thing to rebuild until you do it together." For a moment, Neither said another word. The sound of children laughing, hammers still tapping at a new foundation nearby, and the hum of conversation became a quiet symphony. The sky deepened to orange, the kind of color that makes every face look warm and alive. Dwayne crossed his arms. You know, we started this thinking we were giving something away, but it turns out we were the ones being given something. Keanu looked over at him, smiling. Perspective? Faith. Dwayne said simply, in people again. Keanu nodded. I know what you mean. He took one more look down the line of homes and then glanced toward the empty lot next door, marked with wooden stakes for the next phase of building. Still a lot of ground left. Dwayne grinned. Good. Then we're not done yet. They turned toward the stage again, where volunteers were packing up equipment and folding chairs. The last of the sunlight stretched across the grass, touching every new doorframe and every hand that had helped raise them. As the sun slipped lower, Keanu and Dwayne began walking back toward the main tent, where volunteers were cleaning up. The scent of fresh paint and barbecue still lingered in the air. A group of children ran past them, waving miniature flags, their laughter cutting through the quiet. Evening like music. One of them stopped, holding out a small drawing. It showed 3 stick figures, 2 tall men, and one older man standing beside a little house with a big heart drawn over it. Keanu knelt and smiled. That's beautiful. Who's that? The girl pointed to the smaller figure. That's Mr. Ray. My mom says he's the reason my uncle has a home now. Keanu's throat tightened. You're a good artist, he said softly, handing the paper back. Never forget that kindness builds the biggest houses. The girl giggled and ran off to show her friends. Dwayne watched her go, his eyes shining. You see that? That's how it starts. Right there. They reached the tent just as the last of the banners was being taken down. A light breeze rolled through, tugging gently at the corners of the stage curtain. Keanu paused and looked back one last time at the row of homes now glowing beneath the setting sun. Hard to believe this used to be just dirt and why. Silence, he said quietly. Dwayne placed a hand on his shoulder. And now it's laughter and life. Keanu nodded, his expression thoughtful. Ray once told me he thought America had forgotten him. But maybe what happened here proves we just needed reminding. Dwayne smiled. He reminded all of us. In the distance, a group of veterans gathered by a fire pit, sharing coffee and stories. The flames reflected in their eyes, their laughter echoing into the night. For the first time in a long time, those faces looked at peace. A local news crew had set up nearby, filming the closing moments. The reporter asked if Keanu and Dwayne would mind a few final words. They exchanged a glance before walking over. The microphone hovered between them. Keanu looked into the camera, his voice calm and deliberate. We didn't build homes, he said. We built hope. And hope isn't made of wood or nails, it's made of people who care, Dwayne added, his voice low and powerful. Hope's the hardest thing to rebuild until you do it together. That's what this project is about, standing shoulder to shoulder and remembering that none of us make it alone. The camera panned slowly across the site, capturing the veterans, the volunteers, and the rows of glowing homes. It was more than a construction site. Now it was a living testament to the power of compassion. As the final credits rolled over the scene, Ray's voice from an old interview played softly in the background. I thought America forgot people like me, he said. But then Keanu and Dwayne appeared like 2 angels riding Harleys. They didn't just give me a home. They gave me my country back. The music swelled. Soft piano, gentle and reflective as the screen faded between clips of new families moving in, hands shaking, flags waving, and children running through open doorways. Then the video cut to Keanu and Dwayne standing side by side in the dim light, looking at the horizon. The image lingered as Keanu's voice came through one last time. If you believe no hero should ever be forgotten, share this story. Leave a comment for every veteran who gave their all. And remember, Kindness is how nations heal. The final image appeared a slow fade to the emblem of the Courage Project, glowing against a dark background. Beneath it, in simple white text, appeared the words, "For every veteran, every family, and every person who still believes in the power of remembering thank you." The music softened into silence, leaving only the faint echo of Ray's voice, carried like a prayer into the night.